All right, so let's jump into overcoming objections, right? So when a customer basically is not ready to book their move with you, you give them an estimate, you go through the whole pitch, and they basically have an objection where I need to speak to my husband, or I may have found a lower price, or I need to get a few estimates, or I see some bad reviews online. Whatever it is, that's their objection, right? And having rebuttals to overcome those objections. Basically, rebuttals are just answers to the objections, ways to help the customer overcome them, right? Because if you just allow yourself to accept the objection, right, whatever it may be, they're not ready to book yet, and you just say, okay, I'm going to let it be. If they're ready to book, they'll call me. You're missing out on a lot of opportunity, all right? Remember, at the end of the day, it's all about a win-win situation, all right? So you're not like arm wrestling with the customer. You're not arguing with them. You're just helping to educate them, right? So when they talk about, I want to get some other rates, you might have some, ways to help them really compare apples to apples, right? Or if they're concerned about the price, you should make them see the value, right, in your service and not just the price. So that's overcoming objections, right? Let me give you one example. And when I had my call center, I actually had one of my sales managers. One day I walked in and I hear him on the phone with a customer, and they're basically saying that they want to do it themselves. It was a long distance move, and he said, okay, well, what's that going to cost you? They're like, well, I don't know. The truck rental is, whatever the truck rental was. He said, okay, well, and he got his calculator out, right? He's like, what about the fuel? All right, he did the math. He started doing the math. What about the fuel? It's going to add up to this. You're going this many miles. Let's see. And he adds it up. It's going to take you at least 3 days. Are you going to drive right through? Are you going to stop for hotels? You're going to stop for hotels? Okay, so let's say you even stay in the cheapest hotel. Let's say it's $60 a night. You're staying in, as cheap as it gets. And let's add that up. What about insurance? What about blankets for the truck? Are you going to hire somebody to load the truck and unload the truck when you get there? He adds it up, and it really turned out to be just about the same price as a full service move, right? So the point is that you can overcome most objections, right? But if you just allowed that customer to get off the phone that says, you know what, you're a little expensive, I'm going to do it myself, without educating them as to how much it's really going to cost to move themselves. I mean, who really wants to move themselves? Who really wants to load a truck and drive it across the country? If you're a mover and this is what you do, you're like, that's not so bad. But if you're just like, somebody that's not in the moving business, that's not a professional at doing this, you don't want to do that, right? You want to let somebody come in, load everything up. You want to fly out there or drive out there, whatever it is, get there, the truck arrives, they deliver all your belongings. That's what you really want. I mean, no one does it themselves because they want to do it themselves. They do it to save money. So if you show them that they're actually not going to save money, which isn't always the case, but in this case it was, okay? That's overcoming an objection, right? And if you're going to increase your booking percentage, there's so much, that's kind of a lot of what we're talking about, especially this week, is increasing your booking percentage out of the amount of calls and leads that you have, right? How many of them are you booking? You want to book more with the same amount of marketing, right? And by helping them overcome their objection, you're going to be able to do that, right? By having a set of rebuttals, by knowing what to do when the customer says no, but you want to lead them to a yes. That's so important into increasing your booking percentage, all right? But what happens is, you get a little nervous about it if you're not used to overcoming objections, or if your sales team's not used to overcoming objections. But all that is just not knowing what to do and not knowing what to say. So if you teach them what to do and you teach them what to say, they'll be able to do it. You don't have to be an extraordinary salesperson to overcome, to help a customer overcome their objections and get them to go from a no to a maybe to a yes, right? You just need to know what to say and be trained on what to say and what that process is like. So that's what we're going to talk about in this video, all right? What's that process like? There's 6 steps to overcoming an objection, all right? So let's talk about what these 6 steps are so that you can see how it works, all right? First, let them talk, all right? If they have an objection, hear them out, right? Because you really want to find out everything that they have to say. Acknowledge and empathize, all right? So you acknowledge what they have to say and you empathize them. Like, oh, I understand. You know, you empathize with them. I understand, all right? Determine the objection. So, you know, a customer's not going to say, my objection is that I need to speak to my husband, or my objection is you seem to be a little too expensive, okay? They might say, I need to think about it. They might say, I need to speak to my husband, or I need to speak to my wife, but that might not be the real objection, okay? So number 3 is determine the real objection. And then once you determine the real objection, you're gonna go towards the real objection, all right? And I'm gonna give you examples of all this next, all right? But once you have determined the objection, the real objection, you're gonna go towards the objection, all right? So instead of, you know, going away from it, you're gonna go right at it. Then you're gonna make sense of your service, all right? So whatever their objection is, you need to make what you're providing make sense to them and why there's value there. And then you go for the close, all right? So 6 steps right there. Let them talk, acknowledge and empathize, determine the objection, go towards the objection, make sense of your service, and go for the close, all right? So let's see how this all works in a real example, right? A real common example, all right? So here's an example conversation between, let's say, myself and someone that's moving, all right? Or your moving consultant, or yourself and someone that's moving, a customer. First thing you're gonna do, number 1, right, in the 6 steps is you're gonna listen, all right? So the customer says, I really need to talk this over with my husband before I set this up, all right? So you're listening, that's all they really had to say. All right, you're going to acknowledge and empathize. So you say, I completely understand. That's it, right? Simple. I completely understand. All right, now you're going to determine the objection, all right? Because they said they need to talk it over with their husband, but that's not really the objection. You want to determine what the real objection is. So customer says, yeah, I want to talk to him and see if this price is going to work for us because we received a lower estimate. So it's like, aha, there it is, right? They received a lower estimate. It's not that they need to talk to their spouse because they, you know, agreed to make decisions together about everything, right? So in other words, she has the power to make the decision. She doesn't need to talk to her husband. The real objection, you know, the reason she's saying that is to get you off the phone, but the real reason is they received a lower quote, all right? So now you go towards that. Now you realize it's not, you know, it's not her needing to talk to her husband. It's the fact that they have a lower price. So it's all about price now. So you know that. Now you can go towards that. So there are definitely some cheaper movers out there. Are you looking for the cheapest rate or quality movers or both? All right. So you went right at it. You want to determine what it is. You know, you want to drill down even further. All right. Customer, we just don't want to pay more than we need to for a move, okay? I'm sure you've heard the same conversation before, right? It's common. So now you want to make sense of your service, all right? So, you know, a lot of our customers initially feel that way about the price, but once they see the value in our service we provide and the excellent job we do on their move, they say it was all worth it. If the price was any lower, you would really need to be worried about the quality of movers coming to your home. When comparing prices for movers, it's really not an apples to apples comparison. What I mean is, if you're shopping for a TV or a car, you could shop that same product at different stores and look for the lowest price. When shopping for a moving company, it's important to realize that not all movers are equal. In order for us to send you highly trained movers to handle all of your belongings, not only with care, but also with the skill needed to move you without damaging everything, we charge a little more. Imagine if you went with the cheap movers to save a few bucks, and they sent out movers who made the process more stressful, and you ended up with damaged furniture. Wouldn't you wish you spent a little more money and went with us? So you're not, you know, backing off your price, you're justifying it, right? So you're making sense of your service. They're all about a low price, but you want to help them make sense of why you're charging more. If you want quality trained movers to come out and not damage everything and do a good job, we need to pay them a little bit more. So we charge a little bit more, okay? So then you end with a question. You know, wouldn't you wish you spent a little more to go with us? Of course. I mean, who would say no to that, right? Who would say, no, I'd rather have the damaged furniture? So now you go for the close, right? So now you're talking, okay? So you listened, you empathized, you determined where they're at, but now you're continuing to talk. Listen, I don't mean to be pushy. I just know that we're going to provide you with a great service. That's what you're looking for, right? Customer, yes. You. So let's go ahead and get this set up and tell your husband you found the best movers out there. Okay, let's do it, right? We talked about this. They just want a professional to lead them in the right direction. All right, so this example conversation is as common as it gets, okay? Download the objections and rebuttals worksheet so you could get some rebuttals for, pretty much all of the objections that you'll get as a moving company. But you need to follow these same 6 steps, right? And if we look at this conversation, we'll realize that at first, it would have been very easy to just hang up the phone and say, oh, she needed to talk to her husband. She didn't need to talk to her husband. She has the power to make the decision on which moving company to hire. She was just saying that to get you off the phone, right? So if you go a little bit further, right, there was nothing pushy about that. There was nothing, harassing about that, because that doesn't work. You have to just continue to educate them, make sense of your service, and go for the close again. Remember, this is all after she already said, no, I need to speak to my husband, right? This is overcoming objections, all right? This is something that, you have to train your staff that it's not that you're not respecting somebody's wishes. If they say, I need to speak to my husband, I'll get back to you by coming back with something. If you were to say to them, like, well, why do you need to speak to your husband? He doesn't give you the right to make decisions. You have to call him for everything. If you said something like that, that's the meaning, right? But you're really you want to really look for what the real objection is, all right? Because chances are that's not the case, all right? And if that is the case, there's some things you could do, right? If they really needed to speak to their husband and you determined that that was really the cause, like they don't make decisions without each other, which is common, it's okay, right? Well, I'll tell you what, why don't we go ahead and get your husband on a 3-way call? I don't mind at all. This way, if he has any questions, I'm right here and I can answer them for him right on the spot. Oh, okay, great, that'd be great. Okay, hold on, what's the best number, right? Or they call. You get the significant other, the spouse, on a 3-way call, right? And now you have everybody there on the conversation. So now there's no like, I need to speak to this one or I need to speak to that one. Everybody's there. That's a great tool to use, all right? So the do's and don'ts for overcoming objections, all right? Before we get to that, I just, anyone that I've worked with, right? Any one of my companies, and there was years before I actually opened my call center. I opened several locations throughout the U.S. and I would fly to each one, and each office would have my own set of moving consultants in each location. Well, I had to, sometimes the sales process would fall apart, right? When I would leave and go to the next location or the next location, I would come back and they weren't really following everything. That's why I eventually made a decision to have a call center and handle everything out of one location, to have more control over it. So I would have to go into locations and kind of rebuild up everything they were doing, frequently. And I can tell you that when they weren't doing this, when they weren't overcoming objections, when they were just saying, okay, sure, call me back, right? We were losing out big time. So as soon as I went in, this was one of the first things that I looked at. I mean, are they overcoming objections, right? Are they doing follow-up? And if you're not overcoming objections, you're going to spend a lot of time doing follow-up, all right? But if you can close the move on the first call, and overcoming the objections could be on the first call, second call, third call, fourth call, or fifth call, right? It doesn't have to be the first call, but you want to try to do it on every call. You want to try to book the move right on the first call. I mean, how much more efficient would that be if you didn't have to follow up all the time, right? And if you didn't have to consistently do the 5X follow-up process with every customer, right? You're going to do that less if you're overcoming objections. If you're using the rebuttals, which are in the worksheets, to help you, overcome them, right? So if you don't have a rebuttals, if you don't have a script book with rebuttals in it and frequently asked questions, you need to have that, all right? And feel free to use mine. Feel free to make the adjustments as you see fit, all right? Just make sure that your team is equipped with all the answers that they need, all right? So use the 6-step process for overcoming objections, all right? So whatever the objection is, that's a nice formula. 6 steps, it helps you turn it right around, all right? Offer the call to spouse on 3-way, right? I need to speak to my husband, I need to speak to my wife. Well, I'll tell you what, why don't we just go ahead and get them on a 3-way call? I don't mind at all. This way I'm here and I can answer any questions that they might have, because I know it's a lot of information that we just went over, right? It's not pushy, you're providing value. You're going above and beyond for them, right? Calculate do-it-yourself moves for them. All right, so if somebody wants to, I'm just going to rent a truck, break it down. Get the calculator out, figure out how much fuel it's going to cost them, what they're going to pay for the truck rental, what they're going to have to pay for pads, labor, insurance, hotels, everything, all right? Do the math, because even though it might be less, the difference, if they're looking at your quote that's like $1,500 and they're then looking at do-it-yourself move for, let's say, $1,000, even though it's less, they might say, you know what, for an extra $500, I'd rather have a full service move. All right, those are hypothetical numbers, but what I'm saying is this works. If you actually calculate for them and help them, evaluate the real cost of what it is. Earlier we talked about the real cost of one of your movers. If a mover makes $12 an hour, after you add in the taxes and the workers' comp and everything else, it comes out to $14.50 an hour, right? So the customer might only be looking at what the truck rental fee is and might not be thinking about everything else. So add it up for them and help them see that it's really not that far apart. If they have estimates from the competition, ask them to email it to you. They might want you to price match. They might say, well, I got a cheaper quote, right? Like the example we were just using. She said, well, we have a lower estimate from another company, okay? And you might ask what it is, right? But it's not, again, comparing movers is not apples to apples, right? Everyone quotes differently. Everyone charges for different things. And maybe their inventory is not correct, right? Maybe your estimates are completely off. Maybe they're cheaper because there's a lot of things that are not listed on the estimate. Maybe half the inventory is missing, right? Maybe there's something in the fine print that says they're going to charge extra for, stairs, and they are on the second floor. So you want to be able to say, listen, email me the estimate. Let me take a look at it. I just want to make sure we're comparing apples to apples. If there's something I could do on the price, I'll go to my manager and I'll, see what we could do for you. But I first want to make sure, because that sounds awfully low for the services that we're talking about here. So I just want to make sure it's the same. This way we're all on the same page, all right? The only way to get from no to yes is maybe. Remember that, okay? So this goes back to setting a tentative reservation. Just goes back to, when you end the first call and then you roll into the 5X follow-up, right? The fact that they're at a maybe is good, right? If they're at a no and you can get them to a maybe, right? So if they're at no, I don't want to set this up, you're too expensive, and you go through the objection rebuttals, right? and you get them to a point where they're like, you know what, maybe. You know what, you make a good point, I still need to talk to my husband. That's good. You still went from no to maybe, because the only way you're going to get from no to yes is through maybe, all right? Always set up a tentative reservation. We talked about the power of this. This is very, very powerful. You know, if you don't see the value in it, try it, implement it, and you're going to see how powerful it is. You're going to see by the end of the call, when you set up a tentative reservation for someone who says they need to think about it, they might just say, you know what, let's just go ahead and set this up now, all right? Cross it off my list. Never, ever, ever get frustrated with the customer, all right? Don't show any frustration. Don't take anything personal, right? Always be respectful. Just don't get frustrated with them. Don't make them feel bad. Don't make them feel guilty. Just keep your cool. Always stay respectful and end the call being of service, all right? So no matter what you do, even if they say no, do something of value to them, okay? Well, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead, let me email you out this estimate. This way you have everything in front of you. I'm going to give you all the details that you need so that you could sit down with your husband and you guys can make an informed decision, all right? I'm also going to put my contact information on there. Listen, if you have any questions, once you and your husband start going over this, call me. I'm here. I'm more than happy to help you, right? That's being of service, and that's how you want to end every call. Be logical, not pushy, all right? So, you know, we kind of went through everything. You're making sense of your service, all right? That's one of the 6 steps, making sense of your service. You're being logical, right? You're just helping them to see things how you see them as the professional, right? You're guiding them, all right? So you're logical in your thinking. You're not pushy in your thinking. Make sure you have an objections and rebuttals book at every desk, all right? So whether you take, you know, the script that I'm going to give you or the objections and you put those in a book, or you create your own script and your own objections and your own frequently asked questions, you put them in a 3-ring binder on every single desk that has a phone on it, and allow your team to have access to the answers for, you know, the objections. They have the rebuttals form. Make sure that's at every desk. That's huge, all right? So this is overcoming objections.